On the night of January 30th, 1943, inside a freezing cellar in Stalingrad, Friedrich Paulus sat at a table lit by a single lamp, wearing a newly conferred field marshal's insignia he had never asked for. Outside, temperatures hovered around -20 degrees Celsius. Soviet artillery shook the ruins with mechanical regularity. Paulus understood the meaning of Hitler's promotion delivered by radio that morning. No German field marshal had ever surrendered. The expectation was unmistakable. Paulus did not reply. He had already concluded that the Sixth Army, reduced to fragments and surrounded for more than 2 months, could no longer fight, march, or even retreat. At that moment, the fate of Nazi Germany's leadership system was no longer theoretical. It was exposed, measured in frozen corpses, broken logistics, and the irreversible collapse of authority that no promotion could repair. The Battle of Stalingrad did not begin as a desperate last stand. In the summer of 1942, it emerged from a calculated strategic decision shaped by Germany's economic limitations and Adolf Hitler's increasing personal control over military planning. After failing to defeat the Soviet Union in 1941, Germany faced a war of attrition it was not equipped to sustain. Oil shortages were acute. Romania's Ploiești fields could not meet long-term needs, and synthetic fuel production lagged behind requirements. Hitler concluded that the solution lay in the Caucasus. Operation Blue, launched on June 28, 1942, aimed to seize southern Soviet oil fields and cut the Volga River, the artery through which Soviet industry and food flowed. Stalingrad, a city of roughly 400,000 people before the war, became both a logistical objective and a symbolic fixation. Its name tied it personally to Stalin. For Hitler, capturing it promised strategic leverage and ideological validation. Friedrich Paulus, commander of the Sixth Army, was not a reckless man. A staff officer by training, he had helped plan the invasion of the Soviet Union. He understood operational limits. Yet by 1942, command autonomy had already eroded. Hitler increasingly bypassed the Army High Command, issuing direct orders from his headquarters. Paulus's advance toward Stalingrad stretched supply lines hundreds of kilometers across steppe and broken rail infrastructure. Fuel and ammunition deliveries fell behind consumption. German formations relied on horse-drawn transport in an industrial war. When the Sixth Army reached the outskirts of Stalingrad in late August 1942, it was already undersupplied. What followed was not a swift seizure, but a grinding urban battle that erased German advantages in maneuver and air-ground coordination. Street fighting in Stalingrad neutralized German doctrine. Soviet forces under General Vasily Chuikov adapted quickly, keeping units close to German lines in what became known as hugging tactics, minimizing the effectiveness of German artillery and airstrikes. Buildings were taken and lost repeatedly. Factories like the Red October and Barricadi became contested ruins. Casualties mounted. By November 1942, the Sixth Army had suffered approximately 300,000 casualties, including killed, wounded, and missing, though reinforcements masked the scale. Meanwhile, Germany's allies on the flanks, the Romanian Third and Fourth Armies, were poorly equipped, lacking adequate anti-tank weapons. These formations were responsible for holding hundreds of kilometers of exposed steppe, a vulnerability known to German planners but discounted by Hitler, who underestimated Soviet operational capacity. On November 19, 1942, the Red Army launched Operation Uranus. Soviet forces struck the Romanian flanks north and south of Stalingrad with overwhelming armor and artillery. Within 4 days, Soviet spearheads met at Kalach, encircling the Sixth Army. Approximately 250,000 Axis troops were trapped. Paulus requested permission to break out immediately while fuel and vehicles remained. His army could still attempt a westward thrust, abandoning heavy equipment. The response from Hitler was categorical. The Sixth Army was to hold Stalingrad and be supplied by air. This decision marked a critical failure of Nazi leadership rooted not in ignorance of facts, but in denial of constraints. The promise of air resupply was mathematically impossible. Hermann Göring assured Hitler that the Luftwaffe could deliver 300 tons of supplies per day. In reality, the Sixth Army required closer to 500 tons daily to maintain minimal combat effectiveness. The Luftwaffe, already strained across multiple fronts, lacked sufficient transport aircraft. Weather, Soviet fighter opposition, and inadequate airfields inside the pocket reduced deliveries to an average of around 90 tons per day, sometimes far less. Fuel shortages grounded aircraft. Many transport planes were destroyed on frozen runways. By December, wounded soldiers froze to death awaiting evacuation flights that never arrived. The leadership failure was systemic. Political loyalty replaced operational realism, and dissenting assessments were ignored. As the encirclement tightened, Hitler's command style revealed its fatal rigidity. Orders forbade retreat without explicit permission, which was never granted. Paulus remained bound by military oath and institutional obedience. Attempts to relieve the pocket, such as Field Marshal Erich von Manstein's Operation Winter Storm in December 1942, came within 50 kilometers of the encirclement, but stalled due to insufficient forces and Hitler's refusal to authorize a coordinated breakout. Manstein urged Paulus to act independently. Paulus did not. The leadership culture of Nazi Germany had conditioned commanders to await directives rather than exercise initiative when orders contradicted reality. Stalingrad exposed the cost of that culture. Inside the pocket, the Sixth Army disintegrated. Rations fell to starvation levels. Horses were slaughtered for meat. Ammunition shortages limited defensive fire. Medical supplies vanished. Frostbite and disease spread rapidly. By January 1943, Soviet forces launched Operation Ring, systematically crushing the encircled remnants. Resistance continued not because victory was possible, but because surrender was politically unthinkable. Hitler's rhetoric framed endurance as proof of ideological superiority. The army paid the price. On January 31st, Paulus surrendered the southern group of the Sixth Army. 2 days later, remaining forces in the north capitulated. Approximately 91,000 German soldiers went into captivity. Fewer than 6,000 would ever return home. The consequences for Nazi leadership were immediate and profound. Stalingrad shattered the myth of German invincibility. For the first time, an entire German field army had been destroyed. Axis allies began reassessing their commitments. Within months, Italy would seek an exit from the war. Turkey remained neutral. Japan saw no reason to attack the Soviet Union. Inside Germany, Joseph Goebbels declared total war in February 1943, acknowledging implicitly that previous assumptions had failed. The Nazi leadership now confronted a strategic reality it could no longer manipulate through ideology or propaganda alone. Stalingrad also marked the point at which Hitler's personal interference became an undeniable liability. Senior officers increasingly recognized that obedience to unrealistic orders led to annihilation, yet the regime's structure prevented correction. Officers who challenged directives were dismissed or sidelined. The army was trapped in a command system that punished realism and rewarded loyalty. After Stalingrad, Hitler doubled down, taking even greater control over operational decisions, including at Kursk later in 1943, where similar patterns would repeat with similarly disastrous results. The human cost reinforced the strategic failure. Germany lost an estimated 150,000 killed at Stalingrad, with tens of thousands more dying in captivity. The Soviet Union suffered even greater losses, with total casualties exceeding 1 million, including civilians. Yet the Soviet system absorbed the blow and adapted. German leadership did not. The industrial imbalance became decisive. By 1943, Soviet factories produced tanks, artillery, and aircraft in quantities Germany could not match. Stalingrad bought the Red Army time, space, and confidence. It shifted the war's momentum permanently. In retrospect, Stalingrad proved fatal not because of a single mistake, but because it exposed the cumulative failures of Nazi leadership. Strategic overreach driven by economic desperation, ideological rigidity that replaced operational judgment, and a command culture that equated obedience with competence. Friedrich Paulus's surrender did not end the war, but it ended the illusion that Nazi Germany could bend reality through willpower alone. From the frozen cellars of Stalingrad to the bunkers of Berlin 2 years later, the pattern remained the same. Leadership that refuses to accept limits ultimately destroys itself. Stalingrad was the moment when that truth became irreversible, written not in theory, but in the irreversible loss of an army and the beginning of the end for the regime that sent it there.